Did you know that a motorized medical wheelchair costs $20,000 and up? And that maintaining it is not just expensive, but a real challenge? So the Mobility Independence Foundation seeks to create open source hardware and software designs to address the many problems that durable medical equipment users are facing. So this kind of equipment, such as wheelchairs, as I just mentioned, are not that durable. And users who are dependent on them have to deal with expensive, complex, and long repairs, inexistent or hard to get replacement parts, and inability to fix the equipment themselves, not to void warranties and lose insurance funding. Thomas and Jeff are active members of the MIF and are fostering a vibrant community you might be able to contribute to. What are the features IoT makers and tinkerers like us can come up with that be useful for motorized wheelchair users and that they could easily implement on their own or at a low cost thanks to open source? So let's discuss that today with Thomas and Jeff on the IoT Show. Hey everyone, this is the IoT Show. I'm Olivier, your host. Today we will talk about something special, something that is more related to how you, IoT practitioners, can help a foundation that has a very particular mission in mind. For that, we have Thomas and Jeff. Hey folks, how are you?
Hey.
Hi, thank you for having us, Olivier.
Yeah, thanks for your time. So let's do a quick round of introductions. Thomas, what about you? Who are you?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm Thomas Daniel Queter. I like my middle name. I put it in there for a reason. Um, you know, I've spent 37 years in a power wheelchair now, and I've experienced a lot of problems. Most of them are tech related, but ultimately, the biggest problem is that your equipment is not easily repairable, let alone upgradable. We see today, the smartphone and everything else around us. That technology is advancing very fast, and it comes to people very quickly today. But in terms of DME or durable medical equipment, it just doesn't happen.
Got it. And you did something about it, not just one thing. And we'll talk about that at length today. But that's the context. That's where you're coming from. Jeff, what about you?
Hey, my name is Jeff Lyons. I'm a Navy veteran. I served in the U.S. Navy for 8.5 years. I was a aviation electrician on Black Hawk helicopters, and then I transitioned to working in nonprofits and fundraising. And my role is to help Thomas grow the organization and reach more people with our idea and our mission.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll talk about this idea and mission. And the reason I have you guys on the show is because I'm a strong believer that the people who are watching the show, they are tinker, they are technologies. There are people working with electronics and software and cloud technologies, and they very often, want to find new ideas to use their technology that they like and want to play with. So you both, or you, Thomas, on your side, and Jeff helping. There's a foundation you're a very active member of. Did you actually found or create that foundation?
The Mobility Independence Foundation, very key to its mission, independence. When you have to rely on others to approve a repair or receipt of your equipment, you don't have independence. And what I believe our systems that provide, if you will, fail to realize is that we need to parent our children, hold a job, go outside, visit our communities. And so the Mobility Independence Foundation is seeking to create open source hardware designs, as well as the software embedded and otherwise required to make them usable.
Yep. So you already mentioned a couple of the caveats or problems with wheelchairs and with medical equipment like that. So can you educate us? I don't know the domain at all, and I'm sure most of our audience doesn't at all. How does it look like to not just live in a wheelchair, but have to deal with the repairs, the mechanics, and all of that?
It can be a part-time job just to keep up with the systems that you need to receive a repair, let alone a new piece of equipment, and that's absurd. Those of us who use durable medical equipment, and I consider that to be an oxymoron today because it's not durable, um, we deserve the ability to say when we need our equipment repaired or replaced, not to wait on others for approval. They don't know our situation. They don't know what it's like to wait 12 hours for a glass of water. And it is ultimately in our best interest that we decide when to replace or repair equipment that we rely on for our lives.
Yeah, yeah. You were mentioning, the cell phone and technology evolving really fast and getting to people fast. You can live without your phone. It's something that you can, like people will claim they can't, but it's not the same thing as something as essential as your way of going from a point to another one or accessing things that, you know, people not in a wheelchair don't realize is not accessible, right? And so I hear you. So like deciding being autonomous in terms of when to have something replaced or repaired or whatnot is one thing, but there's another part to it, which is to make it easier. How standard, how available are the parts, are the different elements of a wheelchair? Because it's one thing to be waiting on someone to give you the parts, but is there standards? Is there a community, an ecosystem around these wheelchairs?
Not typically, no. We actually run into a lot of equipment closets and volunteer repair shops, and they struggle. These are people who know what they're doing with the equipment, and they struggle to find the parts. They're often harvesting from other machines to repair one machine, and that tells you that you can't really get new parts for them. Um, I remember having my drive motor fail and being told that it had to be replaced. The kind of person I am, though, I figured out that I could go to the farm store and have it completely repaired and refurbished for $100. That's the kind of thing that we need people to have access to. Technically, that voided my warranty, but they never found out.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, and that's important you bring that up actually, because I love that, but it shouldn't be the case because warranty, equipment, insurance, like it's kind of a circle that you have to pay attention to because, as we're said already, this is something that you do need for everything in your life, and that you cannot compromise the fact that you have some help to fund part of the equipment. And so there are rules there. And so you have to really abide by them, right?
Yeah. Depending on where you live and who you are and how you handle it, if you do a repair yourself and you receive your equipment through insurance, you could void the warranty and be left in the lurch. Let alone if that equipment has broken down after the first 6 months and before the 5 year period that they dictate for new equipment, you're really left in the lurch. John out of California is a good example of that. He received a Jazzy power wheelchair. It malfunctioned right out of the get go. He claims it has a mind of its own because it doesn't go where he tells it to go. It goes somewhere else. And for example, I want you to imagine you're walking down a hallway and all of a sudden your legs decide to slam you into a wall. That's not what we need in wheelchairs. And ultimately, what happened is he waited 5 years to replace that chair and had to continue to deal with that chair.
Wow.
And that's suffering.
And just out of, once again, just for our education over here, price wise, like how much does an electric wheelchair cost? And not just to buy, but to maintain.
So if you want really bad equipment, you can pay a very low price. But for a quality, which doesn't even meet my standard of quality, power wheelchair that's customized to the individual, we're talking about 20 grand. And it does go up from there.
It's like, suffice to say, it's the price of a car.
Yeah, actually. I think there were just a handful of years ago, there was some 7 or 8 different cars you could purchase for the price of a new power wheelchair.
Yeah, yeah, and most of that is paid from you, not from an insurance or something else, right?
So if you have insurance, the insurance will pay for it. The
Okay.
problem is that that limits your options on the chair. That limits your options for customizing. Um, I've seen people in power chairs actually just a couple of weeks ago. No suspension, no pneumatic tires, hard rubber tires, and complaining about how it hurts to go down the sidewalk. That's not a bad sidewalk.
Okay, so that's the problem. That's the problem, and it's big. What are the solutions you're saying? You mentioned open source, open platform. Is there anything existing? We say like there's no real standard, different brands, different equipment. So tell me how a solution would look like.
Well, it's actually pretty available today. We can source tires and suspension from the ATV and even the semi trucking or tractor trailer industry.
Mhm.
That's what I've been using. And there's absolutely no reason why it has to be a very wheelchair specific tire. It just has to be the right size and go on. That's it. Um, there's all kinds of industries to harvest technology and readily available parts from. One of those would be like the Raspberry Pi or the Arduino um, for the HID and motor controllers. We can, in fact, and are harvesting the lower cost now electrical components from the EV market. And that's amazing because that's a safety standard that's so much higher than what's required in today's power chairs.
Right. I think for the Mobility Independence Foundation, I use this analogy a lot when explaining it. When I drive home from work, I drive past gas stations, auto zones, O'Reilly's, auto parts stores, Home Depots, Lowe's, hardware stores. I get all these outlets that have parts for motor vehicles, for anything that I
Mhm.
want to be able to fix at home, and I can do that for most things. Where there's home or auto, I can fix that stuff on my own, and I'm not going to get in trouble with my insurance, my healthcare, or my government who is telling the user that you can't touch this stuff. You have to apply and get approval through this process. What we would like to see is part of this industry grow where there are going to be the ability of the user of that power chair to be able to source the parts and the equipment and be able to make those repairs without having to go through this full multiple layers of bureaucracy in order to get the approval for something as simple. When we mentioned that joystick earlier that was malfunctioning, pretty sure with a Phillips head screwdriver you could take apart the joystick and then realize there's some contacts that weren't quite touching properly, or maybe it was just instead of an X it was like a little bit zigzagged, and you just gotta
Yep. Yep.
twist it back into place, screw everything back together. It's a 10-minute job. Anybody could do it. And that person would not be suffering for several years waiting for a new chair that's going to have the same problem because it's just a known issue, right?
Yep. Yep.
And in cases like mine, I live very rural life. If you don't have a shop to go buy those from, you can actually buy them online. That's what I've been doing. Shipped to the door in 4 days over a weekend for batteries, tires, whatever you need that's out there.
Right. We've got Amazon, we've got UPS. There's no reason why people shouldn't be able to just click, get the part they need, install it.
Agreed. Agreed. Now you would have, so you would need to have this notion of an open platform too, as well as, having a structure like the skeleton of a chair that
Right.
allows, for example, to have a standard size of batteries. Like that way you could just like put on a battery that's coming from the common equipment that is used somewhere else. And same thing for electronics, I guess, right? Having communication between the different parts of the chair being normalized in an open way, and that would not be proprietary and specific to each of the brands, or each of the companies who are building these wheelchairs and selling them, right?
Absolutely. And, I personally believe that this can generate a lot of business for existing businesses that have been struggling for the last decade.
Right. I think when Thomas talks about making these wheelchairs customizable, we're not talking about like East Coast customs where it's like we're blinging these things out. We're talking about each
Yeah.
individual user has very specific needs. We've spoken to people. One gentleman, he's in a wheelchair, and the combined weight of the wheelchair and the equipment itself and his body weight makes it too heavy for him to get on certain wheelchair lifts. So that person has a need for the wheelchair, the weight and balance of the thing to be less weight. He can't afford to have
Mhm.
heavy stuff on there for him to be able to get on accessible lifts and stuff like that. We spoke to another woman. She wants or needs her wheelchair to be able to collapse up and take on an airplane that fits in the closet so that she can, because she doesn't want to use the wheelchair provided by the airport to come and go, because that's also something that's going to be harmful for her and her health. And people who are operating the airlines might not understand, like, oh, you can just use this. And it's absolutely, I cannot. I need to use my specific piece of equipment. I need it to be able to
Mhm.
fold up and go in that closet. I can't let you put it underneath the plane because it comes back broken and then I'm out of luck. So what it boils down to is the equipment that we are designing is made to be able so that they can customize that to the individual needs of unique users. And those individuals who have needs can express that to a community of people who have the experience in engineering and the ability to address and create the customization. So on the platform, the Endurance Power
Mhm.
Chair, which is our flagship program to create this power chair that is open source, the blueprints are available. We can turn it over to a community of people, and the community of makers can then take that blueprint and they can extrapolate whatever ideas they
Yep.
need
Yep.
to address the needs of individuals who are asking, my power chair does not accommodate this need that I have, and it doesn't help me get where I need to go. And they can express those things.
Mhm.
Then the Mobility Independence Foundation, our role in that process then becomes connecting the user who has the problem with engineers who have solutions. Apart from our own team of engineers that we have working on it, we can open it up to the entire world and for everybody to have input and democratize that process, and even use the foundation's philanthropy dollar to provide the incentive, to provide a bounty, so to speak. This is a problem that we've seen repetitively communicated that people need to see it addressed. Whoever comes up with
Mhm.
the best idea, we're talking about this lady who really needs a wheelchair that can fold up and fit in the closet of an airport. How can we do that? How can we solve that? How can we make a power chair that can get her around in the airport, fold up, go in the closet, and then be ready for her when she deplanes to get back through the airport? How can
Yep.
we build a power chair for the heavier set guy to be able to get on that lift and it still accommodates all the other features that he needs? We can place a bounty and have teams of people competing to address that problem and come up with the most creative solution.
Yeah, no, I like that. And there are other scenarios that might be more practical, or I would say not more practical, like different kind of scenarios. One of them is integration with home automation.
Right.
Being able to control things in your house or be notified from the chair, like could be very helpful for many. Not that hard at the end of the
Right.
day, right?
Smartwatches already do that.
Yep. The lights in your home are a big one. If you're in a wheelchair, you're either struggling to get to the light switch or you're limited as where you can put your furniture.
Hmm.
And if you can automate that by your chair automatically turning on the lights as you come and go, or having a panel where you can control them, um, that's a big win.
Yeah, yeah. Or you could have also autonomous, like moving of the chair when you're not on it, and you don't want to have it next to you because you need room, or you want to have, some space, and send it away and call it back when you need it. That's another scenario where you have a need for bunch of sensors and actuators that are not so expensive, and you could build a solution if it attaches to an open platform like the one you're building. That you could have a solution that is then available for people to come and customize, and give it more functionality, new scenario support, and things like that, right?
Yeah, machine learning is a big part of that. Um, it, Sometimes, in my situation and others, you endure injury, and then actually operating the chair yourself becomes difficult. But it's still your only means of getting around the house. If you can pre-program tracks, let's say you need to go to the toilet, and your chair already knows how to do that, then you can just tell it you need to go to the toilet, and it takes you. Um, Furthermore, for a stationary, when you need it to be away from you, as you mentioned a minute ago, if it can come and go from that, it's very much like a Roomba in that. concept.
True. And when you think about it, technology exists. It's a matter of adapting it
Right.
to this new platform, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that nothing that we're talking about here is like a new idea that we have to invent, so to speak. It's really just looking around and saying that between 3D printers and smart homes, Bluetooth, electric vehicles, auto parts stores, Home Depot, all these concepts exist, and we just need to apply that to the wheelchair industry to be able to say we can integrate those things into this platform so that persons with disabilities can utilize existing technologies and bring that sort of into the 21st century, where we're already doing that with a lot of amenities, when this is in fact a need for most people to be able to get around. It's not a want, it's very much a need for them to be able to be self-sufficient and get around in their own homes.
Yeah.
The beginnings of the industry actually started that way. I'm aware of one specifically outdoor power chair being simply a converted riding lawnmower.
A lot that we can learn just by looking around,
Yeah. And one thing that, strikes me in the description of these scenarios is that in the automotive space, for example, now we have these, drive lane assist that will keep you in your lane. And these are not just for comfort. These are also for safety and security of others and yourself. It's the same thing for wheelchairs. If you have, like as you were saying, Thomas, some injury that doesn't allow you to really be sharp on how you're controlling that chair, why would you need to be so precise, actually? If you had a system that was detecting object and doing, avoidance automatically, that would help you. Or you could actually focus on something else, that is talking to someone while you're moving forward, something that people without disability don't understand could be problematic because, you're focused on not hitting things versus just having a conversation with someone while you're walking, while you're going forward. And so, safety, but not just comfort. It's not just a luxury. These are things that are super important for a day-to-day life.
Yeah, I actually spent 2 months driving around with a very badly broken radius this past winter. And I can tell you that was not safe. It irritated the fracture. I had plenty of potential to break it again, but I had no choice because I had to drive to get around the house. Everybody needs a glass of water. Everybody needs to go to the bathroom. And when you have that injury, it's not safe.
Yeah, totally. Well, thanks a lot for sharing all of that. What are the things that our audience can do? What are the few things you would tell them? Hey, if you're interested, reach out, go there, do this. What are these?
I can think of two things right off the top of my head, and I'll let Jeff chime in if I forget anything. Number one, go to the Mobility Independence Foundation's website, themif.com. That's THEMIF. And I was mistaken there. THEMIF.org. And if you choose to, you can donate. But ultimately, if you are aware of the problems with medical equipment like wheelchairs, if you are a user or a loved one or a caregiver, then we do have a survey. We want to hear your problems. We want to make sure that we don't recreate those mistakes.
Yeah, I like that. So that's pretty straightforward. Jeff, anything to add?
Yeah, that's absolutely it. Is we've got that survey on the website, and part of what our mission is not to do all of the work ourselves. We have engineers, they're working on a prototype for this endurance power chair. Ultimately, what we want is to just allow people to communicate with each other and then begin to solve those problems on their own. The survey is the first way that we can communicate with persons who are mobility equipment users, healthcare, and other people who are involved in taking care of persons with individuals and get their stories and experiences and problems. And then we can use that to communicate and say, these are problems that need to be addressed. And then we're going to be able to assemble our community of makers, so to speak, to be able to start working on solutions for those problems. I'm really, really looking forward to seeing that unfold over the next couple of months.
And at the bottom of the website, there is a nice little email icon. If you want to volunteer, if you're an engineer, if you have ideas or technical concepts, maybe they exist, maybe they don't, and you want to help out, send us an email.
There you go. As easy as that. People communicate, right? Directly. It's not just bots.
Right.
And we didn't say the word AI, but I think people involved in AI should be interested as well. There's like so many new things to do in this domain that AI could be very useful for. Train new models and or adapt existing ones. Things that have been designed for recognizing objects and things like, could be applied here. So I really hope that people watching us today will have some interest and will talk about it and will think about how they can contribute. And I'm thinking open source projects with once you have this open platform concept, now you can build around it and bring your own little idea and just see with the community, hey, is it useful? Like, should I continue developing that? What are the ideas and work together on that? I 100% support that. I hope that we'll have some positive impact here.
It's very important to have a capable machine for your life, and that's very specific. I've seen so many people who spent their lives building a business or their career gain a disability midlife, and automatically, instantly, as soon as they're stuck in a wheelchair, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to feel about themselves. They don't know how to feel like they're worthy of existing. And giving someone a very custom solution in that manner so that they can continue to run their farm or their brick and mortar business, that's very important.
It is. Agreed, 200%. So, Thomas, Jeff, thanks a lot for your time today. We're really trying and bring as many people around this project. And I wish you all the best. And thanks again for your time today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Olivier.